Kisukukit, waked. Hello. Welcome to the annual general meeting of the Columbia Basin Trust. We're pleased to welcome everybody joining us right here in Radium, as well as those who are attending virtually on Zoom and Facebook. While many of us are familiar now with virtual platforms, or actually perhaps because most of us are familiar with virtual platforms, we know that occasional technical glitches occur. So for those of you who are joining via Zoom and Facebook, if you have any of said issues, please use the Q&A box on Zoom or the comments on Facebook, and our staff will assist you right away. I am Jocelyn Carver, Chair of the Board of Directors. And joining me today here is our President and CEO, Johnny Strelayev, who will guide us through the latter portion of our presentation today. I would love to take a moment before we begin to introduce our Board of Directors. We have Owen Torgerson, our Vice Chair from Valemount. I mean, what a guy. Susan Klovchuk from Fairmont Hot Springs. Who cannot be with us today, but boy, is she ever on the board though. Angus Graham from Nelson, also unable to join us in person today. Karen Hamling from Nicasp. Susan Hewitt from Caslow. Christine Hushman from Cranbrook. Betty Ann Marino from Warfield. Rana Zust from Golden. Rural Golden, as he consistently reminds us. Krista Turcaso from Fernie. And Bill Van Iserloo, dangerously in the front here from Castlegar. And with that, I would like to formally call the Columbia Basin Trust Annual General Meeting to order. First, I would like to acknowledge that we're present today on the unceded and traditional territories of the Ktunaxa and the Secwepemc nations, and also that the Trust operates within the territories of the Lheidli, the Sinixt, and the Syilx peoples. We'll move now into the formal agenda for the AGM. Can I get a director to a motion to adopt the agenda? Thank you very much. And a seconder? Susan, thank you. The Trust exists to support the people of the Columbia Basin, to create a lasting legacy of social, economic, and environmental well-being, working towards greater self-sufficiency for current and future generations. We're unique. There is no other organization like the Trust, to our knowledge, anywhere on the planet. It is founded by and for the residents of the basin and exists solely for your benefit. At its core, the Trust has two main functions. One, to generate income so that we can, two, deliver benefits in the form of programs, initiatives, grants, and other supports all through the Columbia region. Every decision we make is guided by our responsibility and a need to safeguard our investments and ensure that we can continue to serve the basin for many generations to come. This year's AGM feels particularly meaningful. In July, we celebrated 30 years of working together with the people and communities of the Columbia Basin. Over these 3 decades, together, we have succeeded at strengthening the social, economic, and environmental well-being of the region. The construction of the treaty dams had lasting impacts on people and on ecosystems, but it also sparked something transformative, and this is the creation of the Columbia Basin Trust. Today, our hydropower assets continue to fuel work that benefits the whole region. Over 30 years, we've delivered more than $1 billion in total benefits and supported more than 47,000 projects. Everything from affordable housing to childcare to broadband, wildfire reduction, economic and business investments, nonprofit supports, and arts and culture. We're also making strong progress on our Columbia Basin Management Plan, which was released in the 2023-24 fiscal year. Developed alongside residents of the basin, this is a 10-year plan and it focuses on strengthening the health and resilience of our organization, of our communities, and of our natural environment. Looking ahead, we're focused on this next chapter. Guided by that management plan, we'll continue to develop programs that reflect local priorities and create meaningful outcomes. To everyone who has been part of this journey, thank you. To the visionaries who imagined this impossible thing that became possible, to the founding board that charted a new course, to every director and staff member who helped bring that vision to life, and to all of you, residents, who helped bring that vision to life. Organizations and partners, all of us together have shaped what the Trust is and will continue to in this place that we call home. 30 years on, we have already built a legacy that we can all be proud of, and the next chapter is for us to write. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our President and CEO, Johnny Strylaeff, who's going to guide us through the financial review of the 2024-25 fiscal year and highlight how some of these investments and programs continue to reflect the priorities of the people and the communities that we serve. Welcome, Johnny.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Thanks, Jocelyn.
Just keep saying it.
Yeah. As Jocelyn said, my name is Johnny Strylaeff, and I have the privilege of being President and CEO of Columbia Basin Trust. And it really, truly is wonderful to be here in Radium today. It's really hard to imagine a better venue in the basin. One of the great privileges I have is to be able to travel around our region and see different communities. This really stands out as one of the true great venues across our entire region. Thank you for joining here, and thanks to those that are joining virtually. And as a reminder to those that are joining virtually, if you have any questions that come to mind during the presentation, please go ahead and put those out in our Q&A box, and we'll get to those. And of course, there's an opportunity for the audience to ask questions a little bit later as well. Okay, I get to talk about financials, which is by far the most exciting part of the entire presentation. But before I get started, I'd like to introduce David Bond, and he's a partner at KPMG, the auditor for Columbia Basin Trust. And he's here and available to answer any questions at the end of the presentation as well. So I just want to do a quick check. David, are you able to see and hear us okay?
I can see and hear you, and it's always my favorite part of the presentation too, Johnny.
Yeah. Yeah, we're bros. Thank you, David. So the Trust financial statements are audited by KPMG, who conducted the audit in accordance with Canadian Generally Accepted Accounting Standards. And they put forward what is generally described as a clean audit, no material issues or misstatements in our financial statements. So let's just go ahead and take a look at an infographic that summarizes some of the highlights from our past fiscal year, so the 2024-2025 fiscal year. As Jocelyn mentioned, one of our two core functions is investments, and the other is delivery of benefits. But when we talk about our investments, there's really three categories. And by far the largest is our investment in 4 hydroelectric generating facilities right here in the Columbia Basin. Makes up about 80% of our investment portfolio, and it generated a return last year of about 9.3%. The second category, it's fancy language, private placements. Look past those words. What this really represents are the loans and investments we make in basin businesses and in real estate that we own around the region. These really work to not only generate a financial return for Columbia Basin Trust, but are a significant type of support for local enterprises, and that earned about 4.4%. And the third category of investment is what we call market securities. And this doesn't look a whole bunch different than what you might see if you have an RSP portfolio or if you have a pension. It's a mix of publicly traded bonds and stocks. And last year that earned a return of 10.5%. So before going further, I want to revisit some comments that I made a year ago at our last annual general meeting when I shared an update on a mechanical failure at one of our generating stations, Arrow Lake Generating Station. This is a problem that was discovered more than 2 years ago. And in order to address the problem, we had to take, if there's 2 generating units in that facility, over the course of more than 2 years, we had to take each of them out of service, disassemble, repair, and reassemble the turbines. And while there was never any question of whether we had the engineering or technical expertise to do that work, there was significant question on how or if insurance would cover the cost for the repairs, and even more importantly, the lost revenue that would be realized or not realized during the course of those 2 years. I'm really pleased to report that over the course of the latter part of this year, we brought the second unit back into service, and we were able to recover approximately 75% of both the costs and the lost revenue from being out of service. And this meant we did not have to materially change the level of funding we had available for delivery of benefits around the region. So we're very pleased to report that back to residents. So altogether, our investments generated just over, well, approximately $101 million this past year. And it's really those revenues that allow us to deliver benefits around the region. More than 2,600 individual projects last year, about 56 active programs that were available over the course of those 12 months. And in total, we provided about $76 million back into communities around the region. About 51 million of that is by way of grants, a common way that many residents and community organizations work with the trust. But that's not the only form of contributions back into communities. There's about $7 million in new real estate investments, about 6.5 in new loans to basin-based businesses, and about 4.5 million in what we would call capital projects. So this is supporting economic development in many instances, examples being broadband, a very significant area of trust investment. Okay, so let's take a look at our consolidated statement of financial position. And we really see a simplified version here on the screen. And I just always like to point out, this is the book value of the assets that are owned by all of you, basically as residents of the region, approximately $1.2 billion. And again, a reminder, that's the book value. And the largest portion of that is our investment in the power projects I was speaking to earlier. The current actual market value is significantly higher than that, at least double that. So I do like to remind residents that the value of this portfolio really is quite significant. To develop those projects, we had to borrow money. We didn't have all the funds available to do that work on our own. So we do have a significant amount of debt, about $672 million. And it's critical that each year we make sure we set aside the resources necessary to repay that debt over time and as agreed. And I'm pleased to say we were successful in that again this year. Okay, turning to our statement of operations, or as some folks may think, an income statement. As I mentioned earlier, power projects are by far the largest generator of revenue, about $83 million last year, so approximately 80% of the total revenue available to the trust. But we have other investments as well, as I spoke to with the returns. That makes up much of the remainder of the $17 million in total revenue. And when we look at expenses, by far the largest is funding back into communities, to organizations doing incredible work by way of delivery of benefits. So that's funding support for grants and initiatives and community projects, about $58 million. But again, I'd remind that's not the only way that we invest back in communities, as I spoke to earlier. Corporate costs and power administration costs were approximately $15 million last year. And the remaining amount of expenses largely financing. So this is interest on the debt that I spoke to earlier, approximately $17 million. So a net surplus of approximately $10 million for fiscal 24-25. Again, just a reminder, Columbia Basin Trust is a self-sustaining organization. We don't receive any money from the province of BC or taxation or the Columbia River Treaty or some rich benefactor who's just wanting to provide money to Columbia Basin Trust. It's critically important that we manage these assets to not only pay for the organization, repay the debt that we owe, but make that funding available for community supports. We are 100% self-sustaining. Okay, so that's some numbers, but numbers really don't tell the story. People do. And this last year, as Jocelyn highlighted, or this year marks the 30th anniversary of the creation of Columbia Basin Trust, and really 30 years, 3 decades of working together with Basin residents. And we wanted to reflect a little bit on that by pulling together a video that really honors the people and the communities and the partnerships that have developed over the course of those 30 years. So I'd like to share that video with you now. Ryan, are we good to? Okay, thank you.
The fact of the Columbia Basin Trust is based on actually a miracle of coincidence that if any one of those pieces had been missing, we would never have built this thing.
That those things that make sense are what you need to pursue. That's the trust.
We never expected to get where we got. And so never discount your dreams.
Yeah, just an incredible reminder of just some of the accomplishments from the past 3 decades. Oh, a little echoey. Oh, that's coming. Okay. Oh. It's only me? Okay. There's another way, well, there's several other ways that we're looking to celebrate our 30th anniversary. And the first, or the second I'd like to talk about is our annual Our Trust magazine. So many of you will recognize this as what we like to consider our annual report back to Basin residents. You could expect to be seeing this in your mailbox in the next couple of weeks. We send it out to every household in the region. And it really tells stories looking back over the past 3 decades of incredible achievements. And I know I find it really a tremendous source of pride to see what communities have accomplished. And I think it is important to look back from time to time and just remember how far we've actually come. So looking back is important, but I actually find myself more inspired by looking to the future. So we also made the decision to co-sponsor what is now called the 30 Under 30 in partnership with JCI Kootenay, Junior Chamber International, and really looking to profile some of the youth in our communities that are really making a difference, both within their own neighborhood communities, but within the basin at large. And I'm thrilled that we have two of these really remarkable individuals that will be joining us here today online. I'd like to welcome Darcy Roshow from
Hi.
Yakadaka. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Hi, Darcy.
Hi.
Joining us here, I believe, in Cranbrook, if I'm not mistaken, Darcy?
Yep.
And alongside Darcy is Nick Jensen, who is also from Cranbrook, but he is joining us today from Lethbridge, where he's attending university. So congratulations to you both for being nominated for the 30 Under 30 campaign. And Darcy, if it's okay, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story, as well as your experience with the 30 Under 30 campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. Kisa Kyukit Kapiniskis, who gaksik dasi, un inig tunacha, who gaki gachi yakadak nuklit, who gausagani a kiskaklit, who nani kuniyas ituklisko. So in tunacha, I said, hello everyone, my name is Darcy Roshow. I make tunacha artist from the Tobacco Plains community in Grassmere, currently living in Cranbrook, BC. My business is called Cedar and Pine Design, and I've been operating under this name for the past 3 years. Before that, I was creating art under the name Mountain Arts, and I'm incredibly honored to be a recipient of the 30 Under 30 award. It truly means so much to be recognized in this way. Art has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. It's always been my passion, and I know that my younger self would be so proud of how far I've come. I received my first commission at the age of 13, and by 15, I was hired to paint my first mural at Amy Woodland Elementary School here in Cranbrook. From there, the opportunities kept growing, and year after year, my projects and commissions became larger and more meaningful. Today, I run my own small business, and my artwork can be found throughout the Kootenays. Some of my recent projects include the mural on the exterior of Foundry East Kootenay, a mural at the Regional Health Center in Cranbrook that just opened in April, multiple pieces at the College of the Rockies, including installations in the lecture theater, the cafeteria, UA's classroom, the Class Act dining room logo rebrand, and all 6 of the student housing units. And there are more exciting projects currently in progress that I can't wait to share with you all soon. I try to create art wherever I can because I believe that there's never enough art in the world, especially in our downtown and public spaces. And a big part of my work is honoring and expressing my Tunaxa culture, and I often incorporate native plants, animals, and elements of our traditional stories and legends into my designs. Once again, thank you so much for this, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Darcy. Nick, congratulations to you as well. Would you like to share a little bit about yourself, your story, and how you've interacted with the 30 Under 30 campaign?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to start by thanking Columbia Basin Trust and JCI Kootenay for this recognition. It's been an honor to be nominated for the 30 Under 30, and it means a lot to be included alongside so many amazing people in our community. I'm Nick Jensen, founder of Air Barrier Innovations. My company manufactures air barrier gaskets, a simple but innovative product that helps builders create more energy efficient, durable, and meet minimum building code. The construction industry can be slow to change, but we've been able to bring in something practical that makes a real difference. My company is also currently attending the Home Hardware Homecoming Show in Toronto as an approved vendor. We're also in all the stores around the Columbian Basin, including Cranbrook, Kimberley, Creston, Invermere, Golden, and Revelstoke. I think I was nominated because our company has been able to innovate ideas into a traditional industry and prove that small innovations can make a big impact. I think what brought me here is a mix of hard work, problem solving, and drive to do things better. This recognition isn't just about me, it's about people who supported me and believed in the idea from the start. So again, thank you so much for this nomination, and I'm excited to keep pushing innovation in the building industry and represent my community in doing so.
Thank you, Nick. So thanks to you both for joining, and very much look forward to seeing you and hearing the announcement of the 30 under 30 winners, if you will, around the region. And I believe that'll be September 29th. Congratulations again. Okay, so that concludes the presentation part of the AGM, and we'll transition over to questions. I'll ask Jocelyn if you'd like to come join me. Again, those that are joining us virtually, if you have any questions, please go ahead and include them in the Q&A box. And then we also have a microphone here in the audience. And Denis, will you be, Delphi will be walking around. If you do have a question in the audience, maybe just put your hand up and Delphi will bring you the microphone. It just makes it easier for those that are joining us virtually to hear the question. Is there anybody, or I can flip here, so.
Did we have a question?
Sure.
Yes,
What is the difference between your loan program and conventional loan programs? Are there categories that are not developed by the regular institutions? I'm just curious about. I didn't realize the Basin Trust had a loans program.
Yeah. So it's a great question. So we work with businesses in a similar way as to what you might see a credit union or a bank or organizations like the Business Development Bank work with businesses. But the reality is not every business fits nicely within the criteria that those lending institutions have to adhere to. And we see this often, and you hear it from the business community often. And that's in no way a negative comment on those institutions. They will have parameters that they need to see met. But we find there's significant opportunity around the region to support business owners. An example is in succession, where owners are selling a business, perhaps to somebody in their family or in management. The business might not have a lot of assets that banks would traditionally want to have as security. The trust is able to provide financing that is still commercially responsible, but it's not the type of financing that's available through other lenders. Question. Otherwise, I will pull some questions here. How does someone become a director on Columbia Basin Trust?
Well, what I would say is those who are interested or want to know more can always reach out to either Johnny or myself. Simply get in touch with the trust, actually. Happy to talk a little bit more about that pathway. Generally speaking, though, we could think about the composition of the board of the trust as being Columbia Basin residents from all across the region. Really important to have that regional representation. And that half the board is nominated by the regional district or the Ktunaxa Nation. There are dedicated seats, and so individuals are nominated from within the regional district of the Ktunaxa Nation. And the other 6 are what we call provincial appointments. So those are individuals, community residents, who have skills and experience, a desire to serve Basin residents across a larger region. And those folks usually get in touch with us and let us know they have an interest. And that gives us the opportunity to engage in conversation, to share what service on the board is like. And we always kind of keep a long list of folks who have expressed interest in participating either at the board level or finding out more about how they could participate and support the trust in a more general sense as well. So I think the kind of the shortest answer to that question is reach out and talk to us more. We'd be happy to tell you more about service on the board and pathways to there through that kind of nomination process, either through the regional district or the province. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's excellent. Thank you, Jocelyn. I'll keep looking here, and if I see no hand, oh, please. Could we just use the mic just so that folks can hear us? Thank you.
Okay, how are projects chosen to be funded?
Yeah, great question, and one that I wish I could summarize in one sentence. The answer is it depends. It really depends on the particular program. So in some instances, we will have a program where we say, gosh, here's what we want to see accomplished. Communities have told us this is an area of priority. So we set out some basic eligibility criteria. We announce it. Community organizations put forward proposals, and those proposals are evaluated with how closely they meet the eligibility criteria. And sometimes some tough decisions need to be made because almost always the needs and the requests from communities exceed the amount available. So to be quite honest, sometimes it's some judgment in those instances when the application amounts are higher than the dollar amounts available. What we are trying to shift more towards is, because we've been in the communities for so long, if we want to announce a new program in housing, as an example, we have a very good idea of all the different housing organizations around the region. We proactively reach out now in those instances to say, look, if you're looking to do some retrofits at one of the housing developments you manage, here's some funding that's available from Columbia Basin Trust, and try to move away from that more competitive, as the first example I described, process where, as it's been said to me, there's winners and losers. We're trying, to the extent possible, to move away from that a little bit. So does that kind of answer the question? The answer really does depend on the program. Yeah, we try to, and on any individual program that might be tough. So for example, if we've had in the past funding for heritage property restoration. Not every community has built heritage infrastructure in the same way. So it's hard to do at every program level, but in the totality of community supports we provide, we absolutely try to strike balance across a region about the size of Austria. Yeah.
It's one of the things as the board of directors, it's part of the regular reporting on the programs and initiatives and grants that we offer. That geographic distribution is something we're always attentive to and gets reported to us on a regular basis.
Have a question here. How many offices and staff do you currently have? So the trust has 4 offices around the region: Golden, Cranbrook, Nakusp, and Castlegar. And we have approximately 84 staff at the moment. That number is significantly higher than it was a couple years ago. And that's because of a very significant shift where in the past, Columbia Basin Trust relied on our power partner, Columbia Power Corporation, to manage our 4 hydropower investments. That changed in 2019, 2020. Columbia Basin Trust now manages those projects for Columbia Power Corporation. So that meant we took on the staff that Columbia Power used to have, and we get paid for that by Columbia Power. So there was a significant increase in our staff, but there was also a significant increase in our revenue that paid for those staff. Here, okay, I'm going to keep going down the list. Can you provide an update on the task forces that were recently formed? Yes, some may have been aware a short time ago, Columbia Basin Trust put out a call for expressions of interest to participate on one of 4 task forces: local food, energy, water, and housing. So these emerged out of our most recent strategic plan as priorities really across the Columbia Basin. And we wanted to hear from individuals with experience in those sectors or individuals that could bring some wisdom, support, advice in those areas to help guide the programs that we intend to develop and launch into the future. Really pleased to say we've just come out of the second meeting with each of those task forces. We've asked individuals to put forward thoughts on short, mid, and longer term opportunities in each of those areas. We're actually in the process of taking that feedback now and building it into our annual budgeting process for next fiscal year. So residents can expect to see new programs or initiatives in each of those 4 areas, much of which will be shaped by feedback from individuals on those task forces. Maybe we have a board liaison for each of them, not to put on the spot, but would any of our board liaisons like to comment? Ron, Susan, Betty Ann? Susan Hovchuk isn't here.
I'm the liaison for the Housing Task Force, and we've got an awesome lineup of individuals who are participating in that. They're from across the basin, and they come from different skill sets and areas of expertise. And, you know, we've only had 2 meetings, but they've all contributed greatly and have given some great ideas to trust staff to bring forward for the budget.
Thank you, Susan. Next question. Oh, please.
Hello.
Hi.
Johnny, Jocelyn, thank you so much for this. I'm going to pretense this question with the fact that every interaction that I've had with the CBT in my time here has been extremely positive. The organization, I just find, I find the attitude is glass half full. Let's say glass 3/4 full. My question is a glass half empty question. And I'm just, I'm curious, the genesis of this organization is water,
Yes.
essentially. Fundamentally, to what extent do you think we as a region, perhaps, we as an organization, give consideration to the source of our water?
I'm happy to.
Yeah, maybe I'll just preface it by saying that this is, I just want to recognize the recognition. We are people whose time here in this place is shaped by the shape of the Columbia River, and all that that means. One of our task forces is in fact focused on water. And that's not the first time that we've sort of attended to this aspect of our genesis. And we know that we're in a time, you know, as locally as it is global, of needing to attend to the precious resource that kind of flows through so many of our regions and has impacted the whole region. So if the question is, you know, are we paying attention to it and where is our focus going? I mean, I could ask Ron for a little bit of like, maybe some of the people who are at the table, not to name them, but that this conversation is, you know, going from a broad conversation, what do we know? What is here? And what is the space within which the trust can actually move, plan, and come up with initiatives that have these meaningful outcomes without pretending to be something which we are not? You know, like how can we as this unique and particular place-based organization be impactful in a space that is, you know, hard to contain in terms of how meaningful and important it actually is. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Ron?
Sure. I guess the thing I would add is kind of a comment that we hear all the time: one river and benefits for all. On the committee, we have a wide spectrum and decades of experience, both in the provision of water as a service, but also ecosystem, the availability of water, monitoring of water, quality of water. So it's a big focus, and I will speak to historically. We had a water initiatives committee. Johnny, remind me, 10 years ago it was
yeah.
So water has been at the front of the trust for decades, for the 30 years, I would say. It is the one thing that connects all of us within the basin. I mean, from Roslyn to Golden, it's a very big difference between communities. I'll even go as far as go to Valemont, give Valemont a plug. But the one thing that does connect us all, although we live different lifestyles, have different priorities, different needs, different wants, is the river. And that for me is a key focus for darn sure. Thank you very much for the question.
Just quickly, and I don't want to repeat what was said, but one of the comments from a water task force member that really left an impression on me is that we've been living through generations of a crisis of abundance in the Columbia Basin region in many respects, and it's taken multiple years of drought or near drought conditions for us to recognize, in fact, how precious both the quantity and quality of water in this region really is, and the impacts, everything from the water that we drink at the tap to agricultural impacts to industrial or commercial hydroelectric generating facilities. There's, I think, a stark realization now that we've been living during a period of time of abundance, and in fact, that may not be our future, and we need to start thinking about planning for that future now. So that was part of the genesis, sorry to steal the term, of the creation of the Water Task Force, is what can the trust reasonably support here to bring about greater awareness of water quantity and quality matters in the region. Yeah.
And you know what I would add to that too is one of the things that's been very exciting for me to see at the trust, to witness firsthand, is the way in which the trust, I mean, many of us, certainly I knew of the trust as a kind of a granting organization first before I came onto the board and really understood the breadth of the role that it plays, one of which is convening people so that we are greater than the sum of our individual parts, removing all of those, people and places that sometimes keep us apart and bringing people to the table. And the task forces are an excellent example of that. But the trust has also, I've watched as staff on behalf of organizations and basin residents have reached out to a broader network, whether that's sort of at a provincial level or communities outside the basin where we know exciting things are happening, and helping to gather people together so that we can learn and share success stories and build on what has worked in the past. So there's a very impactful human capacity that has been developing over these decades as well, that I think is sometimes just as important as the kind of programs and financial direction that we're applying to things, is how we can bring people together to help to solve problems and move forward in a good way.
Thank you for the question. What is the, oh, I'm sorry, please.
Just one last question, or for me anyway, one last question. I've asked you this before, Johnny, a couple of years ago, and it's the possible, looking at the hydroelectric potential of the Duncan Dam. And it was sort of, I know it's on the radar, but is there any updates on that?
I think I could summarize by saying no recent updates, but I will say this: the last time we spoke on this, it predated more recent developments at BC Hydro and Fortis, the primary provincial power utilities, and the forecasts of future power needs relative to generation within the province of BC, and coming out and through public calls acknowledging we need more power in the immediate term, measured in just a couple years, than we thought was going to be the case a few years ago. And I know BC, I'm going to be careful, I'm not going to speak for BC Hydro. I am told they are investigating a number of different opportunities, not just the public calls for power. I do not know if they're looking specifically at reinitiating some feasibility at Duncan. They've done considerable work in the past. So the short answer is I don't know. I don't know. It's certainly a water retaining structure there that does have the potential to generate power. Is it feasible?
Too large to have, but you have remarkable.
So the question was, is it too large a task for Columbia Basin Trust, given some of the successes we've had in the past? So we haven't developed projects for a few years. We would have to onboard that type of engineering experience and project development experience that's required for that scale of a project. Can that happen? Yes. But we also have to recognize that we don't own the asset. It is owned by BC Hydro. They have all the rights and entitlement there. So it would take some sort of collaboration or work alongside BC Hydro. And at the moment, there is no initiative in that space. But again, that could change. Sorry, we're being cued in the back of the room.
It's very subtle.
Yeah.
Very subtle.
Wow. What is the latest on the Columbia River Treaty? So just as a reminder, Columbia Basin Trust has no formal role with respect to the Columbia River Treaty. We're not a negotiator. We don't receive funding from any resources that come back to British Columbia under the Columbia River Treaty. We have no influence over the process. We, of course, keep informed, as do Basin residents and communities, about the negotiations and the status of the negotiations, and we're keenly interested in understanding what a modernized Columbia River Treaty could mean across the region. I think many will know that a significant number of years effort had gone into a renegotiated agreement. With the change in the administration in the United States, a decision was made to pause that process, that modernization process, and that continues to be the state of those discussions today. It is on a pause. There's some speculation as to when those conversations may be reinitiated, but it is purely speculation based on my last briefing. So that's the status as we understand it. How do you ensure all communities, large and small, receive an equitable level of support?
Yeah, sure.
So this is one of the benefits of being in the communities for the decades we've been here, is to start to realize how it is the trust approaches its work can be received differently depending on the size and the capacity of a community. We could launch a program across the region, and there's some very sophisticated community organizations in Cranbrook that can immediately put together a wonderful application and be in the best possible position to receive funding. Maybe it's childcare spaces. That doesn't always work in some of the more rural areas, only because the scale isn't there. You just generally have fewer people. This is something that has come into sharp relief, I would say, over the last 6-7 years. And we've put in place specific strategies to reach into some of what we would define as more rural communities. In fact, specific programs, a rural support program where we have members of our staff, community liaisons, is the role title. We have 5 around the region that will go right into some of these more rural areas and say, look, let's not talk about trust programs or money or anything like that. Let's set that aside. What would you like to see achieved in this area that you think would be of benefit to you and your neighbors and the entire community? And start a community conversation. And out of that, identify opportunities to support those areas, move projects or ideas along. And that is exclusively happening in more rural areas around the region. You're not going to see that happen in Revelstoke or Nelson, but you will see it happen in places like, say Jaffrey, Wausau, these types of communities. So that's just one example. We are trying to be very cognizant that not every program that we put in place is as accessible in every community around the region. Jocelyn, do you want to talk on that?
Yeah, maybe I'll just echo kind of what I said before, but this to me is an example of over the 30 years that the trust has evolved. We really have developed now this kind of internal bench strength, where we have a number of community liaisons and staff who are able to spend more time in smaller communities, lending capacity, generating, understanding better the needs of those communities in order that they too can fully participate in the delivered benefits at the trust. And I've been asked over time sort of what are you most excited by? And I would say one of the things I am excited by is this lens that we can look through now, which is going where there is more need for support in order to get the fire lit. So it's really, in a good way, it's really exciting to see staff and communities generate greater capacity for delivered benefits. And I just kind of want to shout out to the staff and community members in NACUSP who really gave us the genesis for this concept through a program called, a project that was called the Common Agenda, that brought members of that community together to identify priorities and work together and alongside the trust to further advance those priorities that were identified by and for the community. So we kind of took that first example, and Karen is nodding as a former mayor of NACUSP, how impactful that was. And in that one example is the seed that all of these, that this program has grown from. And it's been so exciting to see what those communities are identifying and moving forward with.
Thanks, Jocelyn. This is an online question. In 2024-25, the trust spent over 10 million on staff remuneration and development with a workforce of approximately 84 FT full-time equivalents and compensation levels that seem higher than what is common in the region. Beyond the obvious fact that the trust needs staff to operate, can you speak to the value you see from the significant use of funds? Thank you for the question. Columbia Basin Trust is now equivalent to something of a conglomerate. We have significant investment in broadband. We are in effect a telecom utility. We have to have individuals with telecom experience in order to build out and operate the broadband network that's made available to rural communities in the region. We are a power company. We own and operate 4 hydroelectric facilities in the region. We require the engineers, the technicians, individuals in the environmental health and safety space in order to prudently manage those investments. We're kind of like a hedge fund. We have an investment function. We need investment professionals who have the experience to not only identify investment opportunities in businesses and real estate around the region, but develop those partnerships and make those investments possible. And we're a community development organization, ultimately accountable to all of you to use the returns from these investments to support the wonderful work that happens in the region. So we have a very broad human resource landscape that we need to meet in order to, to prudently meet the expectations of each of those business functions. And I'm not sure that I have seen a lot of evidence of compensation, say for an engineer that we have, as being any different than engineers for, say, BC Hydro or Fortis or individuals in our broadband roles as compensation levels that are materially different than TELUS or Rogers. But I think there can be at sometimes a misunderstanding that internally the trust has a degree of flexibility that isn't always obvious for those that only interact with us on the granting side of our business. Did you want to speak to anything like that?
I guess to speak to that sort of most known to people, the granting side, the program delivery side, again, I think there's a way to do things with greatest cost efficiency, but that might not actually hold people at the center and priority of what the organization does. And I know we've mentioned community liaisons, our delivery of benefit staff, the ability to actually lend our human time and experience to communities and other people who are doing the work is what I would say it's foundational to the way that the trust works. We are human-centered organizations and give our time and expertise to people in communities. And I personally, in a changing global landscape of how we work together, continue to really appreciate this aspect of what the trust does.
Okay, I'll go back to online questions if there's no more here. We've got a couple more. We have a few more minutes. Does CBT have any plans to help local businesses that have or may be affected by the tariffs being imposed by the US? Certainly a timely question. The uncertainty of the economic environment we're in right now is, I don't know if we've been in this place since the financial crisis in sort of 2007 to 2009 time period. We do have, as I mentioned earlier, investment professionals that work alongside businesses in the region, keeping informed of how the threat of tariffs are impacting businesses and trying to understand, and it's evolving almost day by day, where there may be opportunity for the trust to provide support. So my answer to this question is we are keeping informed, and there's been discussions with our board of directors around making sure that we're nimble and we could be available as a source of support. We're not yet launching new programs specifically for that purpose, but I would describe us as standing at the ready to see how some of the uncertainty settles out over the coming months. Jocelyn, again, I don't want to say.
No, I'm really glad you decided to answer that question. My goodness.
I've got one last one here online. What are the timelines for funding? Is each funding avenue different, or do applicants receive approval and funding at the same time each year? So the question was asked and actually partially answered. So it does really depend on the program. One of the examples I said earlier where we launch something and it has eligibility criteria and responses come in and are evaluated, those are typically measured in a few months. We have other programs that we support that are very, very quick. So many of you may be familiar with our READY program, Resident Directed Grant Program, that is delivered in partnership with local governments. That is very quick. It happens by way of community consultation in late winter, early spring each year. And each community has a slightly different process for selecting successful recipients. That is very quick. So it does depend. I will say this, over the past few months, we've been working with other community organizations and levels of government where we have found ourselves applying for funding from them. So they are looking to partner with the trust on work that's happening in this region, and it requires the trust to work through an application process. And I just want to say how enlightening it is when you're sitting on the other side of the desk, and the learnings that can only happen when you're the one applying for funding. And we're trying to translate that into streamlining a lot of our processes, reducing unnecessary bureaucracy, if you will, or unnecessary protracted or prolonged timelines. It's a continuous learning thing. We want to be as quick as possible, but in some instances, it does take a little bit of time to work through different funding applications. Okay, that was all of the questions online. I see we have about 3 minutes left. A last call if there's any questions here before we move to wrap up. Okay, well, let's go ahead and do that. Let's move towards the wrap up. So before we close, I really do want to recognize the board of directors of Columbia Basin Trust. All of our directors have to live in this region. They are your neighbors. They are your family members. They are as committed to this organization as they are to their own communities. And particular, I want to acknowledge 3 directors whose terms are coming to an end at the end of December 31st this year. Krista Turcasso from Fernie, Bill Van Iselu from Castlegar, and Jocelyn Carver from Nelson, who joined in 2018 and has been chair since 2020. Collectively, your leadership, your commitment to this organization, your commitment to your region, it's inspiring. And I just personally want to thank you on behalf of senior staff and all residents of the region for your commitment to Columbia Basin Trust. So thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
And with that, I'll leave it to Jocelyn for final wrap up.
And by final wrap up, Johnny means you guys listening to me whine about how I'm not going to be on the trust board come 2026. I will be reaching out to other past directors to start a support group. So you know who you are. Yes, thank you, Johnny. Serving as chair has really been, the opportunity of a lifetime and such an honor. And I'm so grateful for the time that I have had here. Also grateful for each of you for joining us today in person and online, for the thoughtful questions. It's really great to see what people are curious about and have the opportunity to dig a little bit deeper into the mission and inner workings of the trust. If you have more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We happily commit to responding to any and all of your questions. As we celebrate together this 30-year milestone, it's really such a reminder that the trust is not just an organization. You could see it in the video celebrating the 30 years. It is truly a reflecting pool. It's a reflection of the people and priorities of this place that we live. So to our founders, to our partners, to our staff, past and present, and to all of you who have joined on this journey to date, thank you. Your vision, your energy, your commitment have shaped what we are to date, and I'm very excited to see how that same vision, energy, and commitment shapes the next chapter. Huge thanks to those of you who are residents of the basin. Our achievements are, in fact, your achievements. There are no projects, programs, initiatives. None of these numbers and statistics about what we've achieved together happen without the people of the basin deciding that there is something important for their community and going about the blood, sweat, and tears of making it happen. So together, as we mentioned, we have built something incredibly unique, and it is our shared responsibility to move forward and create a legacy for future generations. Thank you for being here today, for your part in the Trust's history up to this moment, and to your part in our future history and to what we will create together. Can I, on that note, before I, fall apart and there's tears and other emotional messiness, can I get a director to formally conclude the AGM? Thanks, Christine, and a seconder. Owen, thank you so much. With that, I'd like to bring our annual general meeting to a close and wish you all a wonderful afternoon. For those of you who are here in person or joining from the Columbia Valley, we hope that you will come by and join us at the community barbecue this afternoon right here at the Radium Center. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. I look forward to speaking with you in the minutes and months to come. Bye-bye. Thank you.